players checked in for Team USA, and if you can hear the crowd, Caitlin Clark checks in to her first minutes as a senior USA national team player. There's a lot of fans here for Caitlin Clark. I see signs, I see Indiana jerseys, I see Iowa jerseys. One of the most influential women's basketball players that we've seen, and she's here right now getting her first minutes in FIBA International.
While Clark's return naturally drew much of the attention surrounding the game, the atmosphere inside the arena was shaped by more than just one player's debut. In fact, the matchup featured an unusually large number of athletes stepping onto the floor for their first appearance with the senior United States women's national basketball team. Altogether, 6 players were making their senior national team debuts during the same game. That kind of collective introduction is relatively rare in international basketball, where teams often rely on experienced veterans who have already played together in previous tournaments. Among those making their first appearance were rising stars like Paige Buchers, Angel Reese, and Kiki Iriafen. Each of them had built strong reputations through college basketball and professional development, and their inclusion on the roster represented the next generation of talent entering the international stage. Because so many players were experiencing their first game at this level simultaneously, the energy around the team carried a distinct sense of excitement. Everyone was stepping into unfamiliar territory together, learning how to operate within the structure and expectations of international competition. That shared experience created a unique atmosphere in the locker room and on the court. The team wasn't simply focused on winning the game, it was also about establishing chemistry and building confidence among players who had not yet spent much time competing together. Clark's role within that environment was particularly interesting. On one hand, she was technically part of this group of debuting players. She was also stepping onto the international stage for the first time with the senior national team. But at the same time, she carried a level of attention that few other players in the game experienced. Her popularity had grown so rapidly that tournament organizers placed her prominently on posters and promotional materials for the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifiers. So while several athletes were experiencing their first game together, Clark entered the moment as the most recognizable face associated with the event. That unusual combination, being both a newcomer and the central figure in the tournament's marketing, added another layer of intrigue to the game's narrative.
Just under a minute and a half left to go in the first. Billings up to Clark. Clark takes her first shot. And it's a 3, and it is good. That is Caitlin Clark's first bucket.
Before the opening tip of the game, Caitlin Clark spoke candidly about how she had prepared mentally for the moment. She acknowledged that returning to competitive basketball after such a long break naturally comes with heightened emotions. Any athlete stepping into that situation expects to feel a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Clark admitted that she had been thinking about this return for a long time. Throughout the months of rehabilitation and conditioning work, the idea of eventually stepping back onto the court remained a constant source of motivation. Each training session brought her one step closer to the moment when the waiting would finally end. Because of that buildup, she predicted she would probably feel energized and perhaps even a little anxious once the game started. But she described that anxiety as the positive kind, the type that sharpens focus rather than creating doubt. For many athletes, that feeling becomes a powerful fuel that helps them perform at their best. Clark also pointed out something many players understand about returning from injury: the first game back is almost always the hardest. It's the moment when everything feels slightly unfamiliar again. Timing with teammates may require adjustment. The speed of the game might initially feel faster than expected. However, Clark expressed confidence that once she settled into the rhythm of the game, things would begin to flow naturally again. Her mindset was not about eliminating pressure entirely. Instead, she accepted that pressure would exist and simply refused to let it control her performance. That perspective reveals the maturity she has developed while playing at the highest levels of basketball. Ever since her college career drew national attention, Clark has competed under intense scrutiny. Every performance attracts analysis from fans, commentators, and analysts who closely examine every decision she makes on the court. By the time she reached the United States women's national basketball team, she had already experienced the challenges of playing in high-pressure environments. Those experiences likely helped her maintain composure as she approached this return to international competition. Rather than focusing on expectations or potential criticism, Clark concentrated on the fundamentals of the game she loves: moving the ball, creating opportunities for teammates, and reading defensive schemes. That approach allowed her to treat the moment less like a dramatic comeback and more like another opportunity to play the style of basketball that has defined her career. And once the game finally began, it quickly became clear that her preparation had worked exactly as intended.
Another look at Caitlin Clark's debut shot. In rhythm, comes off the screen, gets the handoff. And you're right, that very much was a rattler. Touched about every single inch of that rim before.
It had been exactly 239 days since Caitlin Clark last played a competitive basketball game. For most athletes, returning after that long away from real competition usually comes with a slow adjustment period. Players typically take a few possessions to get comfortable again. They might take a simple shot, run a basic play, or just feel the rhythm of the game before trying anything too ambitious. But Clark's return didn't follow that script at all. The moment she stepped onto the court for her senior national team debut with United States women's national basketball team, she didn't begin by launching one of her signature deep shots. Instead, she immediately started orchestrating the offense. On her first 3 touches of the ball, she delivered 3 perfectly timed assists, setting up teammates for easy baskets. Just like that, before she even attempted a field goal of her own, Clark had already stamped her influence all over the game. What happened next turned a normal return into something far more historic. Within a surprisingly short stretch of playing time, less than 20 minutes on the floor, Clark delivered a performance so unusual that statisticians reportedly had to dig deep into decades of international basketball records to fully understand it. By the time the game ended, 5 international records connected to the competition had been erased or rewritten during her debut appearance. The setting was a FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifiers matchup, where Team USA faced a heavily overmatched opponent and ultimately cruised to a dominant victory by a staggering margin of 64 points. The score alone would have been impressive, but the individual performance unfolding in the middle of it became the real headline of the night. Clark wasn't the only rising star on the floor either. Other highly anticipated players were also part of the roster for this game, including Paige Bueckers and Angel Reese, both of whom have become major figures in the new generation of women's basketball. Yet even in a lineup filled with talented newcomers and established players, Clark's performance quickly became the story everyone wanted to talk about. Fans watching the game or catching highlights online couldn't ignore what they were seeing. The pace, the creativity, and the confidence she displayed after such a long break from competition immediately sparked conversations across social media and sports broadcasts. Following the game, Kara Lawson, who was guiding the national team during the event, addressed the performance and what it revealed about Clark's readiness to compete at the international level. Her comments only added to the growing excitement surrounding the team's next game and what Clark might do if given more time on the court. For a player returning after nearly 8 months away, the performance didn't just signal that she was back, it suggested she might be ready to push the pace of the game in ways that few players at the international level can match.
Yeah, first feeling going to be like suiting up for the senior national team.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Like, as a kid, this is what you grow up watching. So obviously I've watched a lot of really great players, and now I think it's kind of like going to be a pinch me moment. Like, this is kind of what you dream of. And obviously, as being someone that's played for 3 junior national teams, you know, not many kids that had that opportunity get this opportunity. So just super grateful.
Surreal. Even just holding the flag on my shoulders today I couldn't even describe the feeling. So I'm just super excited to represent our country and to play with some amazing women.
I feel blessed. I'm gonna be feeling real blessed in those first moments.
Perhaps the most revealing insight into Clark's approach came from the way she described her own expectations before the game began. Rather than focusing on scoring points or creating highlight moments, Caitlin Clark spoke about understanding her role within the structure of USA basketball. She explained that playing for the national team is fundamentally different from competing in other environments. On many teams, star players are expected to dominate the offense and carry the majority of the scoring responsibility. But the national team brings together elite athletes from across the country, meaning no single player needs to shoulder that burden alone. Clark acknowledged this reality openly. She pointed out that when representing the United States, the objective is not to step onto the court expecting to be the central star of every possession. Instead, players must adapt to a system that emphasizes teamwork, balance, and collective execution. That perspective suggests she arrived at the tournament with a thoughtful plan rather than simply relying on her natural scoring instincts. By focusing on ball movement and playmaking early in the game, she demonstrated that she understood the importance of integrating her skills into a broader team strategy. Leading up to the opening tip, the biggest question surrounding Clark's return was not whether she still possessed the talent that made her famous. Her ability had already been proven countless times throughout her career. The real uncertainty centered on whether she could immediately perform at the demanding pace of international basketball after 8 months without competitive play. Opponents at this level often use aggressive defensive schemes designed to disrupt offensive rhythm and force players into difficult decisions. Facing that kind of pressure after such a long absence could challenge even the most experienced athletes. Yet Clark approached the situation with confidence and preparation, trusting the work she had put in during months of training and recovery. By the time the game concluded, her performance suggested that those months away from the court had not diminished her abilities at all. If anything, they seemed to have sharpened her focus and strengthened her determination to contribute to the team's success.
Feeling pretty good at the dub.
For most basketball players, stepping back onto the court after 8 months without competitive action can feel like walking into unfamiliar territory. Muscles that once responded automatically might feel tight. Timing can take a few minutes to return. Even the best athletes sometimes admit they need several possessions before the rhythm of real competition begins to feel natural again. So naturally, many people wondered what was going through the mind of Caitlin Clark as she prepared to enter this international matchup. Not only was she returning from a long break caused by injuries during the WNBA season, but she was also stepping onto the court with enormous attention surrounding her performance. In fact, leading up to the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifiers, Clark had become the most recognizable face associated with the tournament's promotional campaign. Her image appeared on marketing materials, promotional graphics, and broadcast coverage. The event's organizers and television partner TNT Sports highlighted her presence heavily while building excitement for the competition. That kind of spotlight can create an unusual type of pressure. When a player becomes the central figure in a major event's marketing campaign, expectations naturally rise. Fans anticipate spectacular moments. Media coverage intensifies. And every performance becomes part of a larger narrative about whether the athlete can live up to the hype. Clark later admitted that she initially expected to feel nervous before the game. After all, returning to high-level competition after months of rehabilitation would make almost anyone anxious. But surprisingly, when the moment finally arrived, she described her emotional state very simply. Instead of anxiety dominating her thoughts, she felt excitement. That mindset reveals a lot about her approach to the game. Rather than focusing on the long absence or the pressure surrounding the event, she concentrated on the opportunity to compete again. The months leading up to this moment had been filled with rehabilitation sessions, conditioning workouts, and long hours inside training facilities. While her teammates continued playing games, Clark spent most of her time rebuilding strength and preparing her body for a full return. During that stretch, she had no chance to experience the adrenaline that comes with live competition. For an athlete known for her love of the game's fast pace and emotional intensity, that absence likely made the anticipation even stronger. So when the national team finally gathered and the tournament began, Clark's focus wasn't on the pressure created by the spotlight around her. Instead, she approached the game with the enthusiasm of someone who had waited months just to feel the energy of competition again.